In the early hours of May 15th, 1982, 4 Sea King helicopters lifted from the deck of the aircraft carrier HMS Hermes at the start of a daring mission. They carried an entire squadron of the elite Special Air Service, starting out on a high-stakes raid to cripple an Argentine airbase and clear the way for a British landing on the Falkland Islands. By the middle of May 1982, the British and Argentine confrontation over the Falkland Islands was entering its 7th week. Both sides had recently suffered heavy blows, but it was the British that were steadily gaining the upper hand at sea as they prepared to launch a land invasion. On the night of May 10th, the frigate HMS Alacrity was ordered to pass through Falkland Sound in a bid to see if the Argentines had mined the channel between the two main islands. As Alacrity did not sink in this process, it was figured that there were no mines present. The decision was therefore taken to land Britain's troops at San Carlos Bay on East Falkland, far enough away from the main Argentine positions to be confident of a smooth landing, but not so far away as to make it impractical to mount an offensive towards Stanley. There was one major problem though, an Argentine base on Pebble Island, just off the north coast of the main islands. It housed a small airbase which the British thought likely to hold Picara ground attack aircraft. Armed with bombs or rocket pods as well as 20mm cannons, these propeller-driven aircraft could do serious damage to British troops as they tried to come ashore, and would be based only 4 minutes flying time away from the prospective landing beaches. This made Pebble Island a substantial risk, and it was not one that Rear Admiral Sandy Woodward, the local commander of the British carrier group, was prepared to tolerate. He wanted the base neutralised, but there were not a lot of good options to achieve this. Bombardment by air or sea was ruled out as too imprecise. It could not guarantee the destruction of any aircraft, and it carried the unacceptable risk of explosives hitting the civilian settlement on the island. Luckily for Woodward, the contingent of special forces aboard his flagship had a plan which could solve both these problems. Under the command of Major Cedric Delves, D Squadron of the Special Air Service had been aboard HMS Hermes since the start of May, after their involvement in the recapture of South Georgia was concluded. Delves and his men had been searching for a way to make themselves useful to the task force and had already settled on Pebble Island as a potentially lucrative target. They proposed landing SAS troops onto the island by helicopter to disable the airfield and any aircraft by hand, with demolition charges and anti-tank weapons. It was a daring plan, evoking similar operations that the nascent SAS had carried out in North Africa during the Second World War. Woodward was keen on the idea, but the potential risks were huge and information about the target was very scarce. A reconnaissance team under Captain Timothy Burles was immediately dispatched to the area on the evening of May 11th, but were delayed by bad weather from being able to observe the Argentine positions until dawn on May 13th. By then, time was running very short. Rear Admiral Woodward had set a deadline of dawn on May 15th to complete the operation. Any later and it would overlap with possible dates for the main landings at San Carlos. So as soon as Captain Burles was able to report the presence of 11 Argentine aircraft, the operation was swiftly greenlit for the early hours of May 15th. This video is brought to you by NordVPN, which you can use to view a classic Historigraph video which might be blocked in your country. NordVPN is one of the world's leading VPN providers with more than 5,500 servers in 60 countries and a quick and easy to use interface which doesn't require you to be tech savvy. Now, the very first Historigraph video I made was on the Battle of the Bulge, but if you live in any of these countries you won't see it on YouTube. That's because YouTube blocked it. But if you use NordVPN to change your location to a country where it isn't blocked, then you'll be able to enjoy it just like everybody else. This same process also means you can keep watching your favourite shows or sports events while abroad, or access social media features that aren't yet available in your country. NordVPN can be installed on up to 6 devices and will also help to keep you safe online. With their threat protection system, Nord is more than just a VPN, helping to block malware, stop intrusive tracking, and avoid malicious ads. Go to nordvpn.com/historiograph to get the 2-year plan with an exclusive deal plus 4 bonus months free. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. The SAS troops would be flown to and from their target by Sea Kings from HMS Hermes, which meant detaching the British flagship, arguably the most important warship in the South Atlantic, to sail almost alone several hundred miles away from the main body of the task force. Only the destroyer Glamorgan and frigate Broadsword would accompany it on a voyage which would leave the carrier highly vulnerable. Major Delves meanwhile had to prepare his men for a deployment about which they knew almost nothing. The lack of time to prepare meant that the 3 remaining troops would deploy on the island with almost no information about what they'd be facing, and would have to rely on those already deployed acting as guides. The plan did at least benefit from being brutally simple. It was essentially a frontal attack with the entire squadron, with Surprise and Chaos as their chief allies. 18 Troop would join the already deployed 17 Troop in spearheading the attack, with 16 and 19 troops playing supporting roles. Aircraft, ground facilities and aircrew were all to be targeted if possible. And so at 6 PM on May 14th, Hermes detached from the fleet and sped west as quickly as she could. It wasn't long before a fearsome gale blew up and the 3 ships lost speed battling against huge waves. The timetable for the operation began to slip. What was supposed to be a 6-hour journey ended up being more like 7, and the Sea Kings containing the raiding party did not take off until 2:25 AM, badly behind schedule. As the special forces made their way towards the target, to the south HMS Glamorgan was taking up position to provide naval gunfire support to the troops on the ground as required. It was expecting to do so from around 4 AM, but it was only at 3:50 that D Squadron was arriving on Pebble Island. To keep their arrival hidden from the Argentines, they landed some 5 kilometers away from the target and then had to hike into position, which took until 6:10 AM. It was not long until dawn now. For the safety of the carrier, the British troops would need to be extracted no later than 7:30 AM, leaving Major Delves critically short of time. D Squadron's mortar was hurriedly set up and the assault troops were sent forward. 18 Troop had fallen behind during the hike, so they were replaced with 19 Troop under Captain Gavin Hamilton. The airfield on Pebble Island was defended by a detachment under Lieutenant Moraga from 3rd Marine Battalion. As the SAS force approached, most of these were asleep in their beds. Only a roving patrol of 4 men, including Moraga, was on duty, as well as 2 more in the guard hut on the airbase. They would have been somewhat surprised when at around 7 AM, all hell suddenly broke loose. The troops under Captains Hamilton and Bowles charged onto the airfield, opening fire with small arms, grenades and anti-tank launchers on anything that looked even remotely hostile. HMS Glamorgan also opened fire, dropping a curtain of high explosive rounds north of the airfield to add to the sense of chaos and encourage Argentine defenders to keep their heads down. Despite this though, several of the guards did return fire on their assailants, but it was almost impossible to aim through the smoke and half-light of illumination shells fired by the SAS mortar. Lieutenant Moraga and his men were powerless to stop the SAS from reaching the main concentration of aircraft on the western side of the airfield. Within minutes, the SAS set to work destroying these aircraft too, before sweeping around to tackle the aircraft to the south of the Argentine guard hut. As the raid progressed, Lieutenant Moraga began to worry that the attack was a precursor to a larger landing to seize the airfield entirely. Determined to prevent the British from making use of Pebble Island, he moved to activate a series of explosive charges in the runway to make it unusable. This was just as Corporal Armstrong was placing the explosive charge on the 6th and final Pucara. The massive explosion from the Argentine charges blew him off his feet, landing him with a concussion. On the other side of the runway, the charges also destroyed a Skyvan transport aircraft, meaning every single aircraft on Pebble Island was now ablaze. With their mission largely complete and the sky beginning to lighten, it was time for the British to leave. Major Delves gathered his squadron up and pulled back to the rendezvous with the Sea Kings. At exactly 7:30 on the dot, the 4 helicopters appeared from the east and set themselves down. The SAS men scrambled aboard and were taken off, back to HMS Hermes in time for breakfast. It was a raid that had lasted for barely half an hour, planned and executed at incredible speed in the face of a brutal South Atlantic winter. All 11 Argentine aircraft present had been destroyed, with only 3 men wounded on the British side and 2 on the Argentine side. The airfield on Pebble Island that was so close to the upcoming landing beaches had been neutralised, and the stage was now set for Britain's very own D-Day in the South Atlantic. I'll see you in the next video.